guys, it's Kalika. I am here with a new tutorial on how to reconstruct the Jack and Jones animation. So Jack and Jones was an animation ad that I saw on Vimeo and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really, really cool. I've linked you guys to it in the description, and there are also some work files that I've put into the description. If you've not met me before, I am a motion designer and 2D character animator. I also teach at New York University and at Hostos Community College up in the Bronx, though I live in New Jersey, so virtual learning. Anyways, I'm super excited to teach you guys digital design and animation stuff. So here we go. Here is the animation that we're going to make. Well, in 2 weeks we're going to make it, but for now we're just going to design it. Okay, I know that's really short, but we're going to do this much and that's going to keep us busy for a little while. So I'm going to play that excerpt again. It's actually a 35-second ad. It just like keeps going. It's really quite exquisite. I'll play the whole thing this time. So cool, right? So we're just going to take care of the first little section of it, all right? And what I did was I actually downloaded this video, and I have this sort of Vimeo plugin thingy that I use that really helps for downloading videos. So it's called savethevideo.com, and there's a Vimeo downloader there, and I'll just paste this into our live stream chat so you guys can check that out when you have a chance. If you're just joining us, hello, welcome. We're going to be making the Jack and Jones animation in a couple of weeks, but for now we're just going to be focusing on the design. And this I downloaded from Vimeo.com using the Save the Video helper, and I just pasted that into our into our live stream chat. Anyways, so the next thing I got to show you is how to download those files that I've provided for you from Google Drive. So if you click on the bit link that's down in the description for this lesson, it will take you to this folder here called AIGOJJ Design. Okay, yeah, that's a little confusing for you maybe, but we just want this folder right here. So to download it, all you got to do is right click and choose download. Okay, and that's going to download it to your desktop. And once it's downloaded, you're going to unzip it. It always zips when there's a folder, and you'll end up with a folder on your desktop. And then you'll just double click it if you're on a Mac to open it up. If you're on a PC, you'll have to use 7-zip or what have you. And I'm just going to double click that so you guys can see. That's what it looks like. Okay? KFX Geo Design files. Let me show you what's inside in there. I actually dropped the whole Jack and Jones animation in there. You're welcome. And I also put all of the freeze frames that I took from it. Let me show you how I got those freeze frames. I actually loaded that video into Adobe After Effects, and we'll be diving into Adobe After Effects in just a couple of weeks on Monday, October 18th at 6 p.m. I'll be showing you guys how to animate those first few layouts. So if you go to the, if you drop the video into composition, you can actually make markers, and that's what I did here in After Effects. And in order to make the markers, you can either hold the Shift key down and type number. Oh, that didn't work. Sorry. Okay, you can hold the, yeah. So if you want to make markers, here's what you do. you can go to Layer menu, Markers, Add Marker. And if you have an old-fashioned style number pad, all you got to do is hit the asterisk key, okay? So either the asterisk on the number pad, or you can, once again, go to Layer menu, Markers, Add Marker. And then I was able to access, or rather capture, still images from this just by going marker to marker. And if you have the layer selected, the markers end up on the layer itself. You can go between the markers using the J and K keys. And then I just save them out as still images by going to the composition menu, going to Save Frame as File. Okay? All right, and then when you do that, it saves it to a still image file. You can specify whether you want it to be a PNG, a PSD, or a JPEG. I like PNG files. They're nice and sharp, and I was able to capture just still images from that animated video. So that's what we're going to be using for our design purposes. Okay, now before we get started, I'm actually going to launch an app that I only have on my Mac. I figure I might as well use it since I'm on a Mac today. It's called Mouse Pose, and with Mouse Pose, I'm going to show you. It should show you my keystrokes. So fade out after 2 seconds. Okay, so if I'm here, it's not actually showing keystrokes. Nope, no keystrokes. Okay, so that's a lie. It says keystrokes, but it's not doing it. Yeah, and that's creepy. Okay, sorry about that. I just thought that it would be nice for you guys, but I guess not. Anyway, so let me show you the process that we're going to be using for this. It's really quite cool. When we go to Adobe Illustrator, we're going to make a bunch of artboards, okay? And when we make these artboards, we're not going to care so much about what's on what layer and how's it going to animate, and let's separate this out so it can animate separately. We'll do all that later. But suffice it to say, this is my like fake layout so you guys can see how it works. Once we have all these things, we're going to basically have all the design work on like whatever layers we need. And then in Illustrator, you can save out your Illustrator file with multiple artboards. It's really cool. So you can save one version that has all the artboards together, right? So let me just show you test. And I can say save, and I can say, yeah, whatever. And it saves it out with all of these artboards. But if you want each artboard to be on its own separate document, you have to check this thing. So when you do the save as, okay, and I'm going to call this test 2, when I hit save and I go here, look at this. Save each artboard to a separate file. Oh my gosh, that's a thing. So when you do that, it will actually save each and every one of your artboards to its own Illustrator file. And then when you go to open those, each of those artboards is only going to have the layers in it that you had artwork on. So it's not like you're going to have a bunch of layers with a bunch of empty stuff on them, okay? So here we go. Look at that. So we have just one layer here because that's the only layer that had this particular artboard's work on it. And if you look up here, it shows you that test 2, this is artboard number 1, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's so fun. All right. So if you guys have any questions at all, just drop them into the live stream chat. One thing to really keep in mind, my friends, is that there is a delay between when I show you guys something and you actually getting it. There's a delay of, I want to say like on a good day, it's 10 seconds. On a bad day, it's like 3 minutes. So just make sure that as you're like doing stuff, if anything is confusing at all, just drop it into the chat as soon as it starts to get confusing, because this way I can address it quickly and I'll also remember what I just talked about. Okay? All right, awesome. So everyone should have Illustrator open, and you should download those files from the bit link in the description. If there's any issue downloading those files, just let me know in the chat. And if you're just joining us, welcome. Feel free to say hi in the chat. I see Anthony and Reiko. Thanks, guys. And if anybody else wants to say hi, feel free to type that in. Okay, so in Illustrator, there are all these templates, right? And not all of the templates are great. Some of them are really easy to use. Some of them have like all these extra bells and whistles. And I'm going to show you my favorite template to use for film and video use, even though it's not labeled for film and video use. Now you might have noticed that if you do a create new file in Illustrator, you're going to end up with, if you go to film and video here and you do the HDV, HDTV, look at this. You have like all this stuff that shows up on your screen, right? You have your transparent grid, you have your video safe layers, you have rulers, you have crosshairs. I mean, it's staggering all the stuff that shows up there. So we're actually gonna not use this preset. We're gonna use another one and just tweak it rather than opening this one up and having to turn off all of the bells and whistles. So when you do your create new, go over to art and illustration actually, click on 1920 by 1080, which is the fourth one over to the right. And over on the right, you got to tweak a few things. So go over to points and change that to pixels. Then down here, make sure your color mode is set to RGB, okay? And then you also got to click on more settings. Hey, Carol. Hi, Mike. Great to see you guys. All right, so in my more settings, okay, I can actually specify more artboards. That's one thing. And I can tell it what orientation I want to be working in. I'm going to stick with the one where it says profile. I'm just going to leave it at that and just hit create document. Okay, and look at how clean that is. It's just so clean. I love it. Now, the first thing I want to do is increase the number of artboards. In order to do that, I got to go over to the Artboard tool, then go over to Properties and click on Artboard Options. Again, that's under Artboard, Artboard Properties, and then Artboard Options. Now, if you're not seeing the Properties window, you can always bring up any window that's missing just by going to the Window menu, right? So I click on Artboard Options. I'm going to increase the number of artboards. I just did this. How is it? Okay, so anyways, let's try this again. Right here, you actually have to add artboards by clicking this thing. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to actually zoom way the crap out using Command minus. There we go. And I'm just going to keep adding artboards. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this is like a really dumb configuration, right? Like this is just not user-friendly. So I've got to rearrange them. So I'm going to click on rearrange all, and I want them to be 3 across and 20 pixels. And I do all this before I even start designing. I'm going to hit OK. Oh, that's so much better. I was getting a little bit nervous the way that it was just all across and all confused. So I'm going to start by just switching back over to my selection tool, and I'm going to zoom in on just this very first artboard. And again, if you haven't yet done so, there are work files that you can download to use for this, and they are in the description. It's a bit link that'll take you to my Google Drive. Okay. So we're going to start off by placing our artwork onto our artboards. And it's not our final artwork, it's just for reference. So I'm going to go File, Place. And when I do my placement, I'm going to make sure that I'm actually placing, there we go, KFX GeoDesign files. I'm placing it without the link. Okay, now if you're not seeing all this stuff at the bottom, it's because you probably don't have your options turned on. Turn on those options and make sure all the checkboxes are turned off. We're going to start with frame 1. I'm going to hit place, and I'm just going to pull. Now this doesn't need to be perfect. As you pull, don't hold shift or anything, otherwise it is going to go disproportional. All right, that's pretty good. So this is my first layout. I'm going to use the hand tool, I believe it's just H for hand, and then just swoop over like this, And on that very same layer, I'm going to place my next piece of art that I'm working with. So I go File Menu, Place, and I'm going to choose Frame 2 this time with nothing checked below. And again, if you're having any issues at all, just type it into the chat. I'll do my best to answer and help you out remotely. There we go. And now I'm just going to pull that down. Now, supposing you accidentally release your mouse before you're done pulling, you can just pull again, but this time you have to hold the Shift key down. Otherwise, it is going to get all like goofy and disproportional. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and place all those guys. And again, if you have any questions, just drop them into the chat. File, place. And if you're watching the replay, you can also go ahead, or alternatively, you can go ahead and put your questions into the comments. And because I haven't released my mouse yet, I don't actually need to hold the Shift key down. There we go. And I'm just going to zoom out with a little Command minus. I can see those boards already starting to come together. And what happens pretty frequently is that I'll get storyboards from a designer who's not really well versed in motion design specifically, but they're really good at graphic design. And so they'll make this beautiful set of layouts, but they'll do it in like InDesign. And I'm like, guys, InDesign doesn't get along with After Effects. They're like, guys, I don't know how to use anything besides InDesign quickly. And I'm like, all right, I'll make do. So I just take their layouts, I throw them in here, and I prepare them for animation, or in other words, I rebuild them for animation. So if you're a graphic designer and you're watching this, like, please, this is the way to do it for a motion designer, and I recommend you follow these exact same steps. You will be totally fine, and your motion designer will be like, oh my gosh, how did you learn how to do this? It's great. Okay, anyway, so now I've got my three references in here. I'm going to drop just the last four. So 3, 4. There we go. And then one more. File, place. Command Shift P, evidently. So there's 5. We're almost finished. And the reason why I don't use the link option is because I don't like to have to travel with more than one thing if I can help it. So in other words, if I'm switching from one computer to another and all I've got is design files, I'd prefer to just take the one Illustrator design file with me rather than being like, oh, and then I also need to take all the things it is linked to. Like, no, I don't want to have to package them. I just want to be able to move. So 2 left. I just need number 6 and number 7. Now, number 6 and number 7, I put both of them in there. In reality, I only need one of those, but it's good to see these stripes so that we can build them. And then I'm going to place the very last one, and then we'll be able to move on with our lives. It'll be amazing. So while you're waiting for me to do this, if you're not playing along, feel free to drop any questions that you might have about my process or my experience into the chat. Okay, so I have all of this artwork placed, but now I'm going to do what I call the cheap lightbox method. And those of you who've taken my class before and have seen me design before, this is a method I use all the time to just maintain integrity between my storyboards or my sketches and my actual designs that I make in Illustrator or Photoshop. So what I do is I click the little belly button that's in the layer panel next to the layer name. Then I go over to Properties. Hello, Properties. Okay, it's thinking like really hard. Let's tear that off. There we go. And in the opacity for those properties, I'm just going to drop the opacity. And notice, because all this stuff was on one layer, and because I turned on the little belly button next door, it actually made everything a lower opacity. And now I lock it because I don't want to screw it up. So then I go over to the Create New Layer, and I'm going to drop my Properties tab right back on top here. It was being goofy before. And here I'm going to start doing my design work. Now, the thing to keep in mind, my friends, is that when you're designing for animation, it's helpful to design the thing in the neutral state. Okay, you might want to also provide the rotated or like bent or distorted shape, but I prefer personally to just have a nice neutral that I can mess with later on my own in animation. So that's why, for example, I chose this particular frame to capture as opposed to what was animated, which if we go into our After Effects and I just fast forward a little bit here, like right, where was it? Yeah, this guy. See, like this layout actually started here, but I captured this frame where the whole thing was complete. You're better off doing it this way so that way it like animates into this final layout or final lockup, okay? So, all right, moving on. Gonna go back to Illustrator and we're gonna do some design work, okay, friends? So not caring about anything at this point, just trying to get our colors, trying to get our shapes and get it all laid out properly. So I'm gonna place one of these guys just one last time, and that's just so I can pull the colors from it. And I guess I'll pull this guy. Yeah, I think that'll work nicely. And I'm just going to put it out yonder, like outside of all the artboards, and I'm going to pull my colors. Now, some of you, especially my friends who are especially color astute, might have noticed that this isn't true white. This is like a very, very pale gray. So that's actually going to be the basis for panels 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Okay? Now, some of you might be wondering, like, well, Illustrator, it's already got a white background, right, Kalika? No, it actually doesn't have a white background. That background is truly, for real, transparent. If I go to the View menu and I go to Show Transparency Grid, you'll see, oh my gosh, it's actually transparent. So I'm going to turn off the transparency grid, and then I'm just going to make this color. And the place where I'm going to make that color is under my other stuff. So I'm going to take my rectangle tool. Well, let's click off of everything first, right? I'm going to hit I for eyedropper, and I'm going to click on this color right here. And see, I told you it's not really actually white. If I double click this fill, you'll see that it's a 92% brightness, which is not 100%, which means it's not actually white. See where it is in the color thing? Anyway, so I'm going to grab up my rectangle tool, making sure that there's no outline, and I'm going to draw my backgrounds here. So here's one background, and I'm going to just take that with the Option or Alt key held down and scoot it across and scoot it across again. And then I'm going to take these two guys, and notice I locked my actual artwork layer that had all of the storyboard panels on it. And then I'm going to Alt drag those bad boys down again. And I'm doing all this with my selection tool. And if I hold the Shift key down, it's going to lock it to the vertical as I move it down. Notice also that I have my smart guides turned on. If you are like, oh, but I want smart guides, just go to the View menu and go to Smart Guides or Command U. Like I command you to use the smart guides. Anyways, so we've got our color, and next we're going to make our circle. So this circle right here, I got to click off of everything, otherwise it's just going to change the color of the next thing it's going to change the color to the next color I set. So always click off before you choose your color. I'm going to double click my fill, and if you forgot to come over here with your eyedropper, just do I. Whoops. And depending on which of these little swatches is selected, that is going to let you choose either the stroke or the fill. So this time we are actually just working with the fill. So I clicked that black color. Now, before I continue, are there any questions on what I've done so far? Does anyone need me to review anything that I've done so far? All right, feel free to interrupt me with a chat if you want me to review something. Okay, so now I'm going to create a circle, this very large black circle. So as I pull with the circle tool, and you can get to the circle tool just by clicking and holding the rectangle tool, I'm going to take that circle tool and pull, and as I pull, if I hold the shift key down, it's going to make a very large circle for me. Okay, now what I like to do is make this circle like quite a bit bigger than what I need, because if I remember from the animation correctly, my circle actually gets like pretty darn big. So we're over here, and you see this? Like it started like bigger than the canvas, and then it shrunk down. So to save myself the difficulty and potential confusion of having to like, oh wait, what size should it be when it's bigger? Like this is going to be the size that it is when it's bigger. Okay. And because of my smart guides, yeah, it like pops to the center of your artboard. Okay, cool. So that circle is done. Next, I'm going to make the other elements. So I got to click off, and I'm going to grab up the eyedropper, and it's only the 3 colors, right? It's only black, white, and red. And the red isn't even really red. It's like a almost rusty red. So I'm going to take my circle tool and shift drag a circle, and then V for the selection tool, and just drag inside the circle until you get it close. And then just use your little arrow keys on the keyboard to nudge it into place. And if you want it to like concentrically get a little smaller, oh, hi April Diamond, how are you? So then we're gonna pull this Alt and Shift and just pull that inward. Okay, so wait a second, April Diamond, you're actually Dana. Hi, Dana. All right, so here we go. Now I have my red circle, and that's ready. And I want to make this like stripey thing. And the stripey thing, you'll notice that theme comes back again and again. We've got like this little box here. We've got these stripes here, these stripes here, these stripes here. These are kind of stripes, except they're in circles, right? So that's pretty fun. But let's make this little packet of stripes right here. Okay, and again, I like to make these things in a neutral state. So let's start off by switching over to the rectangle tool. I can't have this selected. Now, when I first started using Illustrator, I would get super frustrated because I would like draw something and then I would accidentally change its color. So if that happens to you, just lock the paths after you're done drawing them. Not the layer itself, but the paths underneath, and then you'll be able to like continue to draw more stuff. So I want to get that that same color again, that like grayish. So eyedropper, my grayish, and then zoom in. And I'm going to make my rectangle the same dimensions as this here. So holding shift as I pull. Dana says, yes, I am. She likes to go incognito. So I'm just doing this like temporarily, my friends, just so that I can like get this sized just right. And this is not actually a square, I'm realizing. I want it to be though. Okay, so let's just shift that back. Now, one kind of cool thing that you can do, there is a transform window, and if you come in here, you can just like make sure that your rectangle is not rotated just by zeroing out all these properties. Isn't that nice? And I can make this like a nice round 130 by 130 pixels if I really want to. Oh, so good. So anyways, clicking off, and that was a like very, very light gray rectangle. I'm going to make some black stripes in it. And the black stripes I'm going to do using the rectangle tool set to, rectangle tool? Yeah, I guess I'll do the rectangle tool. And no, I'll use the line segment tool. Okay, so I'm going to swap fill and stroke, click on the stroke, and then actually pull that color again. So zooming into my reference, and actually let me just move my reference so it's closer to what I'm designing. Okay, zooming in, and I for eyedropper, clicking that, and then swapping because I wanted it to be a line. Zooming in here, and here's my line segment tool. Okay, you ready? This is going to be super exciting. Hold shift as I pull, and it makes a stripe. That is a very fine stripe. By fine, I mean like too thin. So I'm going to go over to properties again, which is acting up. So I'm going to slide it over a nudge, and I'm just going to increase the thickness of my stroke until it looks about right. And I'm kind of eyeballing it here. So this stroke I'm pretty thrilled with. And again, if you don't want to screw up something on the screen, like for example, the rectangle, you can just lock its little thingy there. And then I can hold the Option or Alt key and pull down and pull down and pull down. And because I have the smart guides turned on, it's trying to like combination, like duplicate and align at the same time. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just make one, you know, I'm just going to pull that down. So I have all these guys. I'm just going to shift click to get all the stripes. And then bringing up my align window, I'm going to distribute the objects by vertically distributing their centers. Now the problem with what I've just made, my friends, is that if I turn off all this stuff, right, there's my box here, and there's my stripes. So I've got to actually make a clipping mask. So to make a clipping mask, I'm a little clunky at it, but bear with me. I select all of the stripes and then I group them with a Command G, and then I duplicate my rectangle, because you can't have the rectangle be a rectangle and be a clipping mask at the same time, because we want that same shape to be multi-purpose. So I'm gonna Alt drag or Option drag in the layer panel, so I have like 2 rectangles, and then I'm going to, and I always do this in the wrong order, so please forgive me. I'm going to lock my old rectangle. I'm going to select both of these bad boys, and I'm going to go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Rats, I did it wrong. Undo. Let's try again. So I think you have to select the clipping mask first, and then the group, and then Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Perhaps I keep doing this wrong. I think what happens is that it loses the color, so I got to make sure that it has the color. There is a way. If anyone remembers how to do this, please let me know, because I'm like flailing here. Maybe with the Pathfinder. Let's try that. Just the overlapping areas. They are, dude. Oh, you know what it might be? I might need to turn this group of lines into fills, maybe? Sometimes that helps. So if you have like a bunch of strokes and you need to change them to fills, just click on the bunch of lines, go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. There we go. And then if I select both of these and I do this or this, nope, sorry. I'll get there. Okay, so my solution is going to be to just make note of what the line width is here. And if I go to my properties, I can see that it's 12. So I'm going to select this guy and shift select that guy and go to Object, Clipping Mask. I have to bring the mask in the front. Oh, Carol and Mike, thank you so much. So bring the mask in the front. Click, shift click, Clipping Mask, Make. Thank you. You guys are awesome. The power of collective thinking. So now I have that done. That was a relief. Thank you, my friends. All right. I'll teach you animation, you teach me design. How's that? So anyways, I've got that done. I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of these shapes here. So clicking off of everything and then eyedroppering this color and turning off the outline. And I always like to lock whatever I'm done with. And then I'm going to make my 2 new boxes, clicking and holding the line segment tool. Now I have the rectangle. Here we go. V for the selection tool, and then I can just tilt it and see whether it's the right size, and it's not. And now I can just push that into place, and say that's good enough. And in your what's it called, properties, you could just change that to 0, and now that just zeroes out. Cool. So I'm going to duplicate this, Alt drag, and I'm going to pull this bigger. If you hold the Alt and Shift at the same time, it actually will allow you to scale it from the center, which is really nice. And that is like way off, my friends, so I gotta pull that smaller. Okay, and I have a confession to make. I really like counting things, and I discovered that there were actually 20 dots on each side. I know, that's a lot of dots. So I'm going to lock that guy, and I'm going to make my dots. So bear with me while I make some dots. So here's my ellipse of dots, and it's not going to be this color. It's going to be this other color. So I for eyedropper, it's going to be this black. And no outline. Outlines are gross for this. And then I'm going to come over here, zoom in. Okay, fabulous. So I want like 20 of these guys going across. And to do that, just you can do object transform each. I like that one. And if you do move horizontal and you turn on preview and you turn on copy, you can actually like make multiple copies going across. So if I do like 20 pixels across and I just hit copy, that made 2, and then I could do object transform again, which is Command D, and I could just keep doing Command D all the way across. Okay, and I think that's 20. And then I could take all those guys and see, I locked everything else for a reason, right? And then if I do Command G for group, then I could duplicate the group going across. Now what I'm noticing is that before I do that, I should probably make sure that this is exactly the way I want it, especially if I'm going to be duplicating it till Kingdom Come. So I'm just going to move it across like that, and then use my align tool to, or my align window to distribute this across. Okay, so now if I just move this up like this, yeah, that looks more like it. And I have 3, 6, 9, 12. Yep, we're good. Because that was 10 right here. 3, 6, 9, 10. 10 on each side of the transform box. Sweet. So Command G. Now I have my group, and I can Alt drag the group down, or once again I can do object transform each. This time, instead of horizontal move, I'm going to choose vertical move of 20 pixels down. And why aren't you? There we go. 20 pixels down, sure. And I'm going to hit copy. And then I can just do Command D. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that was 20. And now I'm just going to cheat this by fixing the box a different size, or maybe just doing one more and then just adjusting where everybody is a little bit. So just going to move that down a touch and move that up a touch, and then distribute vertically. Distribute, like that. Not bad. Okay, so that was like a lot of stuff to just make one rectangle, right? but I got to group that all together. So I just select all those guys and Command G. That didn't work. So draw box with your selection tool and then Command G. Yay. So now that's done. Sweet. Okay. So that was actually like the hardest of all of these. The rest of these are going to be like relatively easy. So I'm just going to go through and make the rest of these. Any questions so far? I know that one was a bit of a doozy, right? So I'm going to do some red stuff next. So no outline. I guess I'll do all the circles. Okay, there's one. And then you don't have to go in order. You can put this circle here. Remember Alt-Shift, and then I can pull bigger. And if your smart guides get in the way, if they're like trying to snap you too much, just Command U to turn them off. And if you just need to scale up a tiny bit, you can always just fix your width and height here and just go up using your up arrows. That'll just scale it slightly. Now, because Illustrator is a vector program, you can do things like this. You can scale things bigger. It's not a big deal. All right, cool. So now I made that one. I'm gonna make this other guy here. And some of this stuff is like fairly straightforward, especially based on the things that I've already done, right? Like the stripes are pretty straightforward. The concentric circles, I think, would be pretty straightforward as well. But this one here, I'm gonna just show you guys like how to tweak that a little bit, because we have these concentric circles, and when you're making concentric circles like that, or you're making stripes like that, it's important that they be strokes rather than fills. And the reason for that is scale. If you're in After Effects and you're scaling a stroke, there's a really easy way to just be like, hey, stroke, stay the same size even when I'm scaling. But if you have a fill, there's no way of specifying to After Effects that it should stay a consistent width. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. So I'm just going to take my eyedropper, whoops, click off everything first, then come over and get the black, turn off the stroke, come over here, here's my ellipse tool, and I'm going to swap fill and stroke here and just pull that circle. Okay, and then I'm going to increase the stroke. If you hold the Shift key as you increase the stroke, it actually increases 10 point sizes at a time, which is really nice. And as I zoom in, I can see that that's not half bad. So now I can just duplicate it in my layer panel, and then in here in the transform window, I can shift arrow up, again. And then I can do the same thing again, Alt drag in the layer panel, and then back over to the transform. And here, maybe I just want to type in a value and see what happens. And I think I just need to shift arrow up again. And I'll make all these guys concentric later on. And I can see here that they're already like not really perfect, like not. And that might have been because the animator who did this in After Effects, because these were taken from After Effects, might have used a slightly imprecise algorithm to get them to stay a consistent size. So now I'm going to duplicate that one last time, Alt drag, and increase right here. Okay, and I'm going to take all these guys and I'm going to align to center, and I want to align to Artboard. See, you can change what it's aligning to, pretty nice, and aligning vertical and horizontal. All right, not too bad. So that guy is pretty much done, and we can always like copy stuff to other layouts as needed. Just gonna swap fill and stroke here and just make this bar. Notice that the bar is actually like behind this circle here, so it probably would make sense to make an extra circle there. I'm not going to just fill the current circle. I'm going to add an additional circle. So I'm going to Alt drag down. Okay. Use my selection tool to click off of everything. Grab up my gray color, I for eyedropper. Here's my gray color. Scoot it on over. And if I double click on this fill color, see this code here? This is my hex code. And if you, or hexadecimal code, if you copy this, Command C, and then you come over to this duplicated ellipse here, and you click this little color chip, you can double check that it's the same hex code down here in your color window, which is pretty nice. Okay, so I do have a duplicate, and that happens when you're prepping for animation, friends. Just make sure that, you know, you have a little bit of extra there. All right, cool. So next, I can make these concentric circles, not the one that has the filling, but all the others come over to the other side. So I'm just going to grab up all of them and Alt drag over to here. And maybe just make them bigger. Alt Shift to make everything bigger at once. And yeah, I know some of them are going off screen. That's okay. And align to artboards. Whoops, wrong one. Not that artboard, fool, over here. All right, so here we go. Alt Shift drag. Just gonna make that a bit smaller here. And in actuality, when I'm animating, there's a good chance that I'm not going to use all the things that I've designed here, but that's okay. It'll be totally fine. All right, so these guys are in place, right? And I can just nudge them with my arrow keys if I'm not thrilled with their placement. But there's like these stripes happening, and the stripes are simply a layer right on top of everything else. So I'm going to go over to this stroke, and remember how I copied that hex code? I'm just going to paste the hex code in here now, and I'm going to make my stripes with my line segment tool. And the way that I do it, I'm just going to stay in the middle of it, and I can always hit letter A in order to get the open arrow tool, which will allow me to move just like one end of the whole thing, right? So now I have that guy, and I can just like take this whole line layer and duplicate it and rotate it moving down. So if I just Alt drag and then use my rotation tool, I can click where I want the pivot of the rotation to be and then rotate like so. And I am keeping it thicker kind of on purpose because I am trying to keep it straight, like, or keep it clear which line is which. Okay, so clicking off and then clicking on can sometimes give me control over a line I didn't have control over before. And this guy. And yeah, there we go. So yeah, I would just basically keep doing that again and again to get all of those rays going all the way across. So again, all I did was I option dragged to make a duplicate and then used the rotation tool, clicked where I wanted it to rotate from, and then rotated like that. And again, if you're having any trouble at all with what I'm showing here, please feel free to ask, and don't wait. just type it right into the chat. Okay, so once I would have all of these in here, and I'm not going to go through and do all of them for you, then I would reduce the stroke width until it actually matched what I had there, which is about 30 points, it looks like. So these guys are pretty straightforward. For this one, the main thing to keep in mind is that it's going to start straight. Like the whole thing is going to start vertical straight. So if we play through here, there's that, there's this. See this? It like started with almost like chevrons, but they were actually kind of like straight lines to begin with. So the trick there, my friends, is to not have them just be straight lines, but to have them be straight lines with a point in the middle. So I'm going to take my line segment tool in the end, and that's what I'm going to use. So for eyedropper, I'm going to use this black color, swap fill and stroke, grab up my line tool, and I'm going to pull a line down. So just holding shift will let that line be straight vertical. And then over here in the stroke panel, just increasing that line width until it's somewhat similar to what we have here. Okay, now if I hit A for open arrow, you can see that there are actually only 2 points on this, but we want 3. So if I hit P for pen, that'll allow me to add that 3rd point in there. And then when I animate, I can literally just pull that point like this, and that's going to make things so nice. So now I have that particular line, and I can just duplicate it going across using my object transform each, and then do the, not the vertical. So I think if you, no. I'm like trying to reset it with a hotkey and it's not working. So if you reset, if you have this move over horizontal, you can like over crank it just by clicking into the number here, and maybe we want to over crank it to like 150. And yep, that actually took me just about to the right spot. So over cranking it just means that, all right, I already surpassed what the slider amount is going to let me do. But if I just come in here and I type 150, it lets me go past the slider, which is a good thing. Okay. All right. So I have my 150 and I'm actually going to hit copy. So now I have a second one, and then I can actually just keep pulling these using Alt drag, because that's a little faster. And I'm just like roughly putting them in place because you guessed it, I'm going to use the align tool afterwards. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up shortly. So we got all these guys, selecting them all, using the align window, align like this, and then distribute. Not like that. Align to selection, friends. There we go. That's better. Okay, so I quite like how that one turned out, and I need a circle over there. So I'm going to go over to layers and I'm going to make a circle, and so on. So there's that. Next, I would probably need to find a font for this or put my logo in there. So I'd put my logo in there. Fine. Let me show you guys how I take these layouts and separate them out for animation. So I'm going to separate each of these out the way that I would when the whole thing is finished. And here we go. Actually, yeah, let me finish designing these and then I'll do it, okay? So let me just zoom in here and V for my selection tool. I like this ellipse, Alt drag, and then Alt Shift as I pull it bigger. I want this little stick here, so clicking off, I for eyedropper, click on that, click on the line tool. I'm going to trace this line like so and increase the stroke width making sure that the stroke is this color. Oh, come on, friend. Okay. And I always like to like recenter it. See? That just makes my animation life so much easier if I know that neutral is 0 rotation. There's a lot of math involved in the animation property or in the animation process. Like, so I always try to make it as easy as possible on future me. Let me grab up this guy, Alt drag, come over here, I for eyedropper, get that color, no stroke, and V for my selection tool, Alt Shift, pull in that guy bigger, yeah. And then I'm gonna get this one again. Oh, actually, it's almost the same size as, not that, this, which should actually be toward the front. And I'm gonna Alt drag that over here. Oh, that was so close. And then I'm gonna make my rectangle here. So if you click on a shape that's the same color as the next thing you want to make, that can be really, really nice. Click and hold the slash or the line tool and then come over to rectangle. And then I'm going to pull that like so. And then I'm going to swap. Oh, I got to click off. Swap fill and stroke. Grab up my rectangle line segment. Zoom it in. And I know this circle's overlapping the next layout. It's not a big deal. I can always fix it later. So I'm going to come over here, hold the shift key as I pull, and shift arrow up inside of my stroke area here inside of properties. And that seems to be like maybe 20 pixels, maybe smaller. Yeah. All right, and I'm just gonna Alt drag that down a couple and then select all these guys. So let's just zoop. See, I'm just like drawing a big line down with the locks there. And then with my selection tool, selecting all those guys and then aligning them to the left and distributing them up and down. See that? I did align left and distribute up and down. Cool. Okay, so those are done. I can group those guys. Command G, right? Zoom it out, zoom it out. And then we have this section. Okay, so here we have like the logo and then there's stuff happening inside the logo. I'm going to pretend that I know what font that is. So I'm going to do I for eyedropper. I'm going to click on that blackish color. And then I'm going to come over here and just make these lines. Okay, so swapping fill and stroke. Shift drag. I'm going to drag long, friends. It's going to be very long. And that is on purpose, totally on purpose. I'm doing that so that it can be animated for max effect. So A for the open arrow tool, I'm just pulling on that last guy. And as I mentioned, I love to count, so I should put that in my like Facebook profile. I'm a girl who likes to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these guys. So V for my selection tool, increase the stroke width a bunch. Maybe not that much a bunch. And then Alt drag downward. And you have to pick, because there's distortion happening here, I'm going to pick the left-hand side of this design to align to. Because the left and right are not perfectly aligned, even though it looks symmetrical. It's like not actually. And once I put effects on it, it's not going to be symmetrical then either. cool. So I'm going to take all these guys, align to the left, distribute, and group, Command G. Yay. Okay. So now I have this like super long thing. And I can actually just pull that, just make that like super duper long. Okay, cool. And let's do the logo next. All right, the logo is on this like blackish background. So clicking off with the selection tool, I for the eyedropper to get up this color, turning off the stroke. And this black color is going to be my background for a couple of different layouts. So let's just make sure that we're on the rectangle. This layout gets the black background, and so does this background, this layout here. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to lock those guys, and I don't know what font that is, but I'm going to guess. Let me grab up my grayish, I for eyedropper, click that, turn off the stroke, and hit the type tool. Now, if you're ever not sure what a particular font is, Photoshop actually has a font identification system. I know, it's wild. And it will help you identify fonts. I think this is probably like Helvetica or Helvetica Neue. I don't know. We'll try it. Just going to increase my type size here. And if you click the little 3 dots at the bottom of the character section of your properties panel, it'll actually show you everything. Like, look at that. I can change it to all caps. And then I can change the type here to Helvetica Neue, not condensed, bold. Yeah, that's probably fairly close. Okay, and my color is totally wrong. So let's just highlight all that. And color window. I still had the hex code. Okay, and then I could just pop that in here. And this is close to the same font, but not quite. It should probably be like bold italic. But anyways, I mean, it's close enough. It's closer than the one that I ended up with. So at any rate, we're going to take this and now we're going to separate everything into individual panels and then separate it into individual layers. So I'm going to save. Can't believe I haven't saved yet. That was a bad idea. Jack and Jones. And then unlock all the guys. Okay. Save again. Command S. And then I'm going to do File, Save As. I'm going to call it Jack and Jones Layout. Hit Save, and remember, the Artboard section shows up like here in the second window. So save each artboard to a separate file, all. I hit OK. Awesome. And then I get to do what some people call the tough part, okay? The tough part really involves just separating things out into separate layers that we're going to animate in After Effects. So I'm going to open up my first layout here. See how it called it Layouts Dash? So this is layout number 1. I'm going to Command minus here. And because these were overlapping my artboard, which if I click on the artboard tool, there's only one artboard. See that? It says artboard 1. If I click on artboard options, this right here, friends, is money. It says artboards. There is just one. All right. So I can take all this stuff that's not on the artboard and hit delete. And then if I want to, I can rename this guy ref and lock it. And I want each of the things that's going to animate separately to be on its own layer. And in this case, each of these boxes is going to be on its own layer, right? This stuff, the stripes and the rectangle, I got to group those. So I just select them both and shift select their belly buttons, Command G. And then everything else is going to be on its own layer. So here's how you separate, all right? I'm going to click the little belly button. I'm going to click the little hamburger in the upper right corner of my Illustrator window. See that? And then you click Release to Layers Sequence. Okay, now when you do the Release to Layers sequence, it creates what are called sublayers. And After Effects can only recognize the topmost one of all your layers. So you actually have to select all these sublayers and drag them down a level. Now, while it can get confusing to have layer names that aren't special, like they're called layer 2, layer 3, layer so on, for something like this, I might just leave it that way, because renaming layers isn't my favorite thing to do. Animating is. So this layer doesn't have anything on it. I know that because there's no little like caret next to it, right? So if I just click on it and go to the trash, now we're all better. Okay, so if I turn off my ref and I look at this, this is like ready to animate. So I can just hit Command S and it's going to save it. I should probably rename this bottommost layer BG so I know that that's the background. But aside from that, like, it's going to be fine because in After Effects, when you hover over stuff, it gives you like a little selection box anyways. All right, so I'm going to redo this just one more time. Anyone have a preference for which layout I separate out? Let's take a look at frame number. Oop, not that. Rats. Wrong one. We will try again. Command O. Layout 2. Hitting open. And again, you want to make sure that you delete anything that's not used in this current layout. So I click that circle. I draw a box around this garbage. It's not actually garbage, but it's not used in this layout. I select this one and I hit delete. I might want to extend, woo, hello, Command C. I might want to select this rectangle at the bottom here and just make it slightly larger so that I don't have like a little thin gap there, right? And then zooming in, let's rename this guy ref, lock it. I know, yes, lock it, turn off its visibility, and I can see that we have a bit of a layer issue. So I want to just make sure that these two circular ellipses are above my bar, okay? And once again, clicking the layer name, clicking the belly button, clicking the hamburger stack, and then going to release to layers sequence. Are there any questions on this part? Because it seems to trip up a lot of people. Anybody have questions on this? Just let me know in the chat. Remember, there is a bit of a delay. So release to layers sequence, and then I'm going to click and shift click and then drag down. And then take any empty layers that don't have the little triangle and just go down and hit the trash. This guy is my BG. And for this one, maybe it would make my life a little bit easier if I renamed stuff. So I'm going to call this C1. This guy is going to be C2. This guy is going to be C3. And I'm just doing this because otherwise it could get really confusing when I start animating. You don't have to, but this right here is C4, but they're both C4. And I just want to make it clear which one is which. And I know if I click on the little belly button next door, it's going to show me over here in the bottom of my tools panel that we actually have a filling color there. So I'm going to go over and just call this C4 filled. That's going to make things a little easier for me. And I'll just call this red. Okay. And then this guy is ready to go. And always, friends, always save as an Illustrator file. Don't ever save it as a PDF or an EPS or an SVG, because then it's just going to merge everything down and you'll just be unhappy when you bring it into After Effects. So yeah, I'm basically just going to go through and separate all this stuff out into its requisite layers. For layout number 4, let me just open that up so you guys can see. Layout number 4. Command minus to zoom out. Click and delete. Okay. Ref. Make sure that with this one, everything's in the right order. So I'm going to drag the rectangle all the way bottom and make sure that the stripes are grouped. And I also would like to, even though in their version it didn't have it, I want to make sure that my stripes are aligned to my rectangle here. So just making sure that I have my smart guides turned on, and then see it's like showing that this is aligned here, and then I can pull this and just make sure that's aligned on both sides of this. See? Okay. And then I could do the same process once more. Release to layers sequence, click, shift, click, drag, delete the empty, rename BG, and rename this stripes. I like making it simple on myself, so I don't like go too nutty with the renaming. All right, awesome. Fabulous. So I'm gonna stick around after my exit and just continue to fix all of these and finish them. Thank you so much for joining me today. In 2 weeks, on October 18th at 6 p.m., mark your calendar, we're going to animate these. We're going to have them go from one layout to the next to the next. There's a lot of match action happening in this animation, so I would definitely recommend that you check out some videos on YouTube about match action and the graphic match. It's something that comes from film editing, actually, and it works super well in motion design. We're going to have a lot of fun animating it. So make sure you brush up a little bit on your After Effects skills if you haven't used it in a minute. Down in the description are all of my social links. If you make something cool using the techniques you learned here, please feel free to tag me on Instagram with a hashtag KalikaFX, KALIKAFX. And you can also follow me on Twitter at that same handle, Facebook, KalikaFX Training, and subscribe if you haven't yet, and if you liked this video. Matter of fact, I think after the live stream, the likes flush out, so if you liked the video, wait a couple minutes after the live stream is finished and give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for future live streams, please let me know. And I take every suggestion seriously. My buddy Anthony is constantly like sending me really cool links on Instagram. I love it. So feel free to drop right into Instagram, just DM me something cool that you saw and I'll respond and we can maybe make a tutorial about it. Okay? All right. Well, thank you again for joining me and I hope to see you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.